Welcome to a new episode of the Life Science Get Together podcast. Today on the podcast with me is Christof Goetz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Christof, when I talk with life science companies, with startups, it doesn't matter if it's the digital space or a therapeutic space, very often I get presented the facts, technology, what the company is doing, what is capable of, what the next goal is, the market. And there are two things that I was made aware from investors recently in the podcast. They ask the questions that I also like is, what's your mission and what's your vision? What's your goal behind the company? What would you like to achieve? And as we met, I think it was 4 years ago, you did one thing differently. So right from the start, you started with why you are doing what you do. Could you tell us a little bit more about your approach to corporate development?
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. It's a journey now. It's 3.5 years. Yeah. So 3.5 years since we had our first kind of idea phase. And basically we had tests before we founded the company with my daughter. So the basics behind it was that I wanted to help my daughter to help her with initially issues with social interaction because she was diagnosed with autism and also with low IQ. And then the idea was that helping her with the social interaction would help her in life. As we developed something in our little project, we saw that there is actually more to it. It helps with concentration, duration, relaxation capabilities. We also know it also helps with speech and other kinds of things. And as we had her in the first test before we founded the company, we had other children, more kind of friend children in tests, and we saw also the positive impact. Then we started before we founded the company. Okay, well, why should we do this, and what is actually our ultimate vision behind it, and why, and what should we do? So we very much actually we had a coach before we started. It was an impact angel or impact consultant. So we very much on the social enterprise part. He introduced us into a concept of starting with your why, which is from Simon Sinek. I think it's a very popular TED talk you can find on YouTube. And he gave us, we had a small team at that time even, of 5 people, and he gave us the task of recording why are you working on MyMind, why are you working on Brain Hero, on our idea, and why are you part of the team? And I think it was a very interesting exercise. So we still got the videos from that time. So I think in watching it now, after a couple of years now, it's very interesting. And based on these initial videos, we gathered more information of why this is a problem and why we can help people. And then we came into the how, and then later into what we should do. And I think it was, and I also created a mission and vision very quickly. So, and we broadened this vision actually, because we said, okay, the issue we're solving is not just pure on autism, it's actually much wider. We're helping, we said, okay, we're helping people with neurological impairments to help them to use their full brain capacity and to become help basically to become independent in life. So that was our first kind of vision we formulated. Now we are more doing it. Also, we including also now the what and how. We also say, okay, that we're using affordable, state-of-the-art technology to help people getting their full brain capacity. And that's where we started basically. So having lots of actually workshops, asking why we should do it and where the problem is and how can we solve the problem, and how can we generate the impact that we want to achieve to get more children into a self-sufficient life later. Because That's basically where we started.
So let's decompose it a little bit. So let's go back to the beginning of MyMind. And you said that you had a personal reason
Yes.
to start that. Can you explain it a little bit more? What drove you to? I mean, I think many parents have children, and also I think children have several times certain conditions and health issues. But you did something that other parents didn't do. So you started a company basically for that.
Yeah.
And what I'm interested in, why did you do that? What was the purpose? Did you say, okay, I'm not looking on the market, what's there already? I developed something myself.
It was partly an accident, to be honest. We tried a lot actually. So we always, because when you have a child, we know now our child is actually not that severe that many other children are. So our child is kind of, because autism is kind of a spectrum. You have light cases, so it's called of Asperger, and then you have really severe cases who cannot speak. Our daughter is able to speak. She goes on regular school and has an integration class, but of course she's got issues. And we tried lots of things. It was and many parents are trying lots of things. We're not the only one. There's a kind of, you get for the diet, you have this kind of gluten-free and casein-free diet, all these kind of things. For some it works, for some it doesn't. It looks like all the parents are organized and they're trying the things. And one of our therapists then said, okay, have you tried neurofeedback? Because we heard that this might be something that works, or there are some indication that it could help at least.
How does it work?
Yeah, well, it works like, well, you use EEG signals. So the brain is creating electricity, and depending on what you do and what you think, and it creates electricity in different areas of your brain that you can measure with an EEG. And this EEG signal is just an electric signal, and this electric signal gets transferred into a computer interface, which is in our case a mobile game, and it's basically translated into a movement of a figure in the game. Mm-hmm. And this is what we call brain hero. So you can see it behind this blue thing. This is just behind me. Is our current consumer-based EEG that is the basis where we do our clinical study with, and by doing and what we found in our clinical studies that we looked into is that certain frequencies, certain areas, if you train that, it will help, for example, with social interaction. It would help with concentration levels. It helps you to calm down. It also helps you to solve certain connectivity issues that you have within the brain. So maybe some parts of the brain who should work together are not working together. So you can train it up to 4 electrodes on your head at the same time. So that's basically what it is. And basically the feedback comes, so that's why it's called, so you have neuron feedback, is your feedback comes visual. Usually you can also have audio, but in our case it's visual. You can see that the game you're playing with your brain waves, you have a game figure that goes up or down, and then you can steer the game and control it with your brain. So that's how it works.
Mm-hmm. This is the situation we have right now. And when I go back 3 to 4 years, you also were looking into neurofeedback devices on the market. But yes. I assume you were not very happy what you found on the market because you changed something. What got you going?
We looked into there are neurofeedback clinics. So you go into really it's like usually private practices, mm-hmm. Or really clinics, they call it clinics. And you have kind of old, they look kind of ugly EEGs because the technology is not that new anyway. And then the thing is, what frightened me for my daughter was usually you have like a full cap, or you have electrodes that you have to put in with that kind of gel. So it's a gel that connects, so it makes the connectivity. So what I saw, it takes usually about 10, sometimes 15 minutes before your brain connects to the EEG. And that time is too much for a child with a severe neurological condition. It just takes too much time. For my daughter, it would be too stressful. And if you think that doing that game, you have to train that you relax, so basically you need to train how to calm down, and you have to train how to concentrate in certain areas. And then you have this pre-phase that is causing enormous stress. And I thought this is not the right thing. And I know that we're doing now full head EEGs at our office as well. We know and we the only thing at the moment, we cannot only be the first using also existing technology at the moment because we're still developing our mobile EEG. But we see it's really hard also for the therapist to get a child with a severe neurological issue to do a full head EEG. It's not just that easy. And then having a game and to train relaxation and concentration is not efficient enough. And then if you think you have to do it at least twice a week, you have the logistics as well. So it's just not a great setting if you have a child with this severe neurological issue. So and this child is actually usually is seeking for a regular and a predictable daily routine. And if you go there twice a week, you pay about 80, 100 euros per session. Usually it's not really reimbursed by the insurance company. It's not really doable. And that's why I thought, okay, this would not work for my daughter. And so we started.
How long is the session in the clinic? Is that 15?
Usually, yeah, it's 45 minutes usually, 45, sometimes 60 minutes. So this is also quite long. So you have 15 minutes of setup time, and then you have an hour of actual feedback. It really depends what they're doing.
And if they use gel, you need some cleaning procedure afterwards, I guess, also for.
Not much. You usually get basically out, and you have to go and wash your hair because the scale is terrible. It's actually really bad. We know
I would say it's not very child and parent friendly. The environment. I mean, good intentions, and I completely understand now that you say, okay, I want to do something, but I think, let's say, the average Austrian might complain, and you went in another direction. You said, I developed something new. How did you get started? I mean, developing something like when you were talking about a variable EEG, I was thinking about the Apple Watch. Basically, what you had in mind is developing a device for your child that you can use on the go, basically. So, how did you get that started? How did you get the first step nails down?
It was easier than expected, to be honest, because we found an open source EEG, and basically you download and you can buy it. It's OpenBCI. I think it's a great company. It's really fantastic if you want to do brain research. Go there and experience. If you want to do it yourself, it's not really expensive. If for a few €100 you get a decent EEG that you can use. And basically they're using it for lots of research stuff, but also it gives you really a quick access to evaluate things, and that's what we did. And it was very ugly. So when you see behind there is this is what we started, which we didn't work. So this is actually this is really printed as a 3D print that you can get from OpenBCI. This helmet is basically that someone who's neurotypical can wear, but a child with autism has issues to wear anything on your head, and that makes it very difficult. So this thing is not possible, and that was the first issue we actually had. We couldn't get this right. So in the end, it looked very ugly and very duct tape-ish, but we had just the tape and started with it, and that's basically what the EEG is inside.
This is the first version.
That's the very first version. Yeah, this is 2.5 years, 3 years ago. So this is very, very first.
And you did it outside of a company shell, so you did it privately.
Yes. Yeah, well, I did it in my other company. So I have a consultancy, or more or less myself. So I was self-employed, or I'm self-employed since 2004. So I had it within that company. I had a project, and I had actually then my staff who was working on the project. I had 2 biomedical engineers, and then in the end, industry designer, and to redesign that helmet actually.
But the point, sorry to interrupt you, but the point also back then was that you wanted to help your daughter. So it was the focus of to solely develop something that helps your daughter. Yeah,
it was really cheaply made. We did use this OpenBCI. We had a very cheap and simple Android app, and then we tested it for a couple of months. And to be honest, I didn't really expect much. It was just a little play around, and so we started. I think I invested about 8,000-9,000 euros, something like that, and then we had a go. After about 3-4 months, we saw changes, and unexpected changes, to be honest, because we said, okay, what we expect is we will have an increased social interaction, which we saw. So she was starting to actually interact more and play with our son as well. It's very difficult to measure this actually, but it was really obvious that there were some changes. Then we saw that she suddenly looked into your eye very long, and actually too long sometimes, you think, because children with autism usually have issues with eye contact, and suddenly you have your daughter looking into your eye, which was the first thing that you can really recognize. Was that's new, and also with kind of meltdowns, we saw that we could give her hints, like, okay, because we always saw that she was on the way to lose control, and I once told her, okay, think about the brain here moving down. And then she realized, oh, this is how it works. And basically she gets angry, of course, but she could avoid meltdowns, which was also actually quite good, because this is really what is an issue usually when you are outside in the public, in a supermarket, and you have a child that really goes, and if you have a meltdown in a supermarket, you don't want to go to a supermarket again. Never. It's really and everyone is looking to you. And so basically, what kind of child do you have, and this kind of thing. So I think every parent
giving you great advice.
So. And then later, the school actually reported that she was improving in their concentration duration, and they had a presentation from the Vienna Stadtwerke there, and she was listening actually for 2 hours, and they were very impressed. And we were also impressed because she never worked something for 2 hours. So this gave us really hints that this is working. And then we started with more children. We had more severe cases then. We also have now much more severe cases. We have also children who are affected with tumors or really with very severe low IQ, no speech, so these kind of things. And we see changes over time. It takes a while, but we see changes, and we're working on getting, if you have now the device at home, so you can train more. So we're trying what is the ideal duration to reach a target, because you shouldn't play too much. For example, if you're affected by epilepsy, then you shouldn't do that too much. So maybe you should train it more down. So these are the kind of things that we're trying to understand. What is the right dosage of training? Also, we're trying to experiment also, instead of the game, using video feedbacks, or maybe you just watch your series and try to keep your concentration level. So that's something that many clinics are doing at the moment. And I think that's something that could be much easier integrated in a daily routine. So if the child is watching something anyway in the evening, then they'll watch it with having a light EEG on the head. And our ultimate goal would be to have our medical device then within a device that looks more like a baseball cap rather than an EEG.
That would be great. But back then, when you started, so you had the problem identified, you found a solution, you started working on that, and you were pretty impressed by the results your device generated. And I believe afterwards, word of mouth spread and other parents approached you probably.
Well, we had to keep it low because we knew that we had to think about how we can make a medical device out of this. So we had very early advice from the Vienna Business Agency and had a workshop with them. And I think it was a very great advice. So basically they gave us two directions. So one could be making a consumer device for everyone. Mm-hmm. That would be one option, but that's something we didn't really want. Mm-hmm. And the other thing would be to generate, in the end, a medical device. But for a medical device, you have very different prerequisites. And actually, you're looking into a medical therapy system. So we have components. So the EEG would be one component. The software would be one component. And together, it would be a therapy system. And everything needs to be either medical certified already, or we have to develop it on our own. And we knew at that point that we have to make a decision at some point. So we started redeveloping the software from scratch with all the documentation behind it. And then in the end, we started to develop our own EEG, which was technology on a similar basis that the open source EEG has. But with a couple of improvements that we thought are important, and basically we started to create our own firmware and everything. So
I think this was the turning point to decide to take it out of your other company's shell from the project state and go down the medical device route. I mean, I'm a huge fan of medical devices. For one reason, because when it really proves that under clinical condition it works, you can really leverage and help people a lot better than going down the consumer route, because you end up somewhere on PlayStation level. It's fun, but probably doesn't reach really the kids who need help. So it's a smart decision.
I think it's also, we looked into that because consumer devices, like there's Muse, there are lots of great devices out there who are basically just for more or less relaxation purposes in general, and sometimes also claim concentration. But to be honest, more or less they can only claim that you are able to relax more, because the points that they usually have are in this area. You can measure, of course, some concentration levels, but usually you have lots of the artifacts of your. So if you blink your eye, you would see this in your EEG. And as you're not evaluating your brain before you do the therapy, they'll do it in a low dosage. So it's not something that you can really see as a medical product. And they're cheap. Of course, you can buy it for some. You can buy for 150 euros, some for free, 400. And then you're there, and then you can have your relaxation training, and we are not able to compete with that. So we applied for Vienna Business Agency funding to, as a first step, create a consumer EEG, our own EEG that we could use, and also the game that we could use then for a medical study, and then taking it further, develop it further to become a medical product. And that's where we are now. So basically, we are now en route to finalize our medical EEG by the end of the year, which is going to be actually, it's going to be two devices now. It's one 4-channel device, which is mobile, and can be used at home for therapy. And it's a 24, well, in the end, it's a 19-channel EEG, so it's a full hit EEG that basically therapists or any doctor could use to conduct EEGs, but at a price point that is about 10% of the price of any other medical device that you can find.
How did you do with the funding? You said you founded a company and decided to bring the prototype into the corporate shell. And I believe, I mean, you said 3 years ago, must be 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago.
We founded the company in December 2018. So that was the time when we got positive results from the funding of the Vienna Business Agency. And then we had our own, I sold shares of another company just, I think 1.5 years before that time. So we invested private equity in the company. And also we could almost double it with the Vienna Business Agency funding. So that was the starting point. And then we started to develop. So building the team, funding the company. We had one room, but in the first district, we had one room as a headquarters as part of a tax consulting company. We increased the team size. Got 2-3 biomedical engineers then. We also had into web design, social media, these kind of things. And we started with a new hardware developer at that time, which turned out not great. So we had to exchange that, which was in the end luck, because we founded two very talented hardware developers now. Who created now the basis and the foundation of the EEG that we have today, because it's a very different league that we are playing now with our medical devices. Gave us more focus on hardware, which we didn't want to do in the beginning. So this is how we built it then in the end. And then we luckily actually got another funding round from AWS. And we won the seed financing.
Congratulations.
This was a bit more than a year ago. So once we got the seed financing, we could actually then move to a real office where we are now. So we are now in the 9th district. Where we have enough space to conduct EEGs with children, come up with the clinical study, creating the EEG as a medical product, creating the software as a medical product, and that's what we started in the beginning of the year. We had another financing round in the middle of the first Corona lockdown.
Okay. How much money did you raise?
We raised at the time 350K, and we are now in the process of raising another 700K.
Okay.
And that we hope to close by the end of the year. It looks actually quite good now. Actually we got additional funding now. So we secured another FFG research project. We are about to have actually 2 FFG research projects, I'm sorry. So we are now stretching out of autism. So we're going into anxiety, we're going into epileptic seizures, ADHD, low IQ. We are also involved in diagnostics. So we are now evaluating if we can use our technology for early diagnostics of dementia. So we're doing this along with the Austrian Institute of Technology.
But I guess not in children anymore. So
no, that would be very early. That would be very early.
But with perfect diagnostic.
But the good thing is that basically the stuff or the devices that we're building now give us a foundation to do actually much more.
Okay.
And as we have the cost advantage, so basically you have an EEG then in the end in every, I don't know, if you have a an elderly home, then you will have an EEG there where you can do these tests, or maybe you have brain training in an elderly home. Why not? So you can do also things like this. We are now much more in contact with international universities who are using EEG signals to diagnose neurological issues. So we're trying to spread our area that we are able to also diagnose in the end certain areas. So autism can be diagnosed using EEG signals, for example. We're using it for now. We're trying to use it for checking our efficiency of the training. But in the end, it could be, we hope that we can use it for diagnostics.
So basically you build out of your personal necessity, I would say, wearable EEG device.
Yes, and yeah.
It opens a whole world. I mean, it's like what Apple did with the watch, with, it's not EEG, of course.
Yeah.
But, are you able to build it in, I would say, in an everyday device, as you said, in a baseball cap, so that it looks quite normal?
Yes and no. So at the moment we are, it's still not that small, because with medical devices, you have to fulfill all these tons of legal requirements. So it needs to be waterproof. You need to ensure if it's connected to 220 volts that it's not harming anyone. So there are certain spaces that you actually need for a medical device, and so at the moment it looks like it's going to be this size. I think I got it. So it's roughly it's going to be like this. So the device itself. So if you look at it in here, it will be somewhere in this head, and there will be basically, this would be underneath the baseball cap that we can clip on top of it. But it could also be sold without it. So
and do you really get the same quality like a standard EEG in the hospital, so that you get the same quality of readout?
Yes and no. It depends on, you have different technology types of EEG. If you go for the very expensive EEG, you have usually active electrodes. This means that the electrode has its own power supply. And once the signal comes from the electrode to the EEG, it's a very clear and good signal. But most EEGs are not using this. So they're using electrodes who are just measuring it, and you have a cable, and through that cable you have lots of, and basically you get all the signal from, you have this 50 hertz from the power supply, and that you can even get, I don't know, 200 meters away from any power supply. So that's something you will always see in the technology we are using, and that's something that needs to be filtered. And I think that's basically the disadvantage we have. However, for our purpose and for what we want to do, it's perfectly all right. And in terms of frequency, hertz, so like the speed, the frequency we're covering, we are quite good in we can compete even with the 20K medical devices, EEGs, with very, very little exception. So we cannot go beyond 1 hertz. That's basically everything.
Is your product on the market already, or is it?
No. It's still a long process. So we have to develop the EEG first. So that's what we're doing by the end of the year. It has to pass certain tests. So we have the TÜV as the notifying body. So we have to go through a lot of lab testing. So we're doing lots of testing already now, but it has to really undergo a month. It is really 1 month in a lab to do all the tests that are required, that they can say it's a medical device or a medical EEG. There are very certain specific tests and norms for medical EEGs. And when you've got this, then you can apply to be a medical device. And this takes you, we don't know really yet, because the TÜV is always saying, okay, it could take 2 months, it could be 6 months. We are expecting 6 months. So we expect that by the end of the summer next year, so maybe early September, mid-September, we should have a medical certification if everything goes to plan as we plan it at the moment. But of course, there's still risks.
And this could be the point in time when your device can be produced at scale and
yes,
sold already to children that need your device.
Yeah. We're thinking of having a non-medical product in between, but we haven't. We have to work with Argus and also with our lawyers and how we are able to market this. That's something we are thinking of. We also, with the clinical study we're doing now, we are learning to build the product and improve the product. That's something we are working on. So because I think it's very important to work and improve the product together with the parents and the children. We're also conducting tests with adults already. So we're also working with adults to working very close, for example, with Specialist Vienna. They are doing this is a company who's it's an HR company, so they provide adults who are diagnosed with autism for example, software test management or these kind of things. And our team is also we have people from Specialist Vienna working for us, so that's also helping us to get feedback to the product and improve it so that our target group is using it and loving it and hopefully making this as a part of an everyday exercise.
So it's good news that you are basically 6 months away that the marketable version 1 really hits the market from the regulation point of view. But as I know you, I think it's not the end of the development of your company.
No.
So you don't plan to retire in 6 months, sell the company and move forward?
No. Well, there's still a lot to do. I think what we start is we're starting with so the first product is aiming for children with autism. So that's the first thing, but it will be followed very quickly, probably with ADHD. But we are very early in our test. So because the thing is with neurofeedback in the medical world, it's especially with ADHD, it's not 100% proven, and we want to make our own test and want to make our own measures that this is really working, because otherwise we're not bringing it to the public. We see that it works for anxiety, we see that it works for ADHD, we see improvements in low IQ. With ADHD, we have to run our tests, and so we see it with anxiety, low IQ, and autism. That's where we see the improvements. But still, there is a lot of potential. We see as you're doing this training much more regular than you would do it in a clinic, you can generate more impact, and I think it can be a combination. So if you have a clinic where you do it maybe once a week, and then you give a device home, which is a medical product, in addition to what you do in the clinic. So that's something we also considering. And I think that could be, we have contacts to already some of the neurofeedback clinics, and they are very interested and say, okay, this could be very good for us, because because they are not allowed to use non-medical products as part of the therapy. Some do, but legally they are not allowed to do so. And this is where our device would make a difference, because then you have a very cheap, affordable medical device with a training software where you can extend your training at home, and especially in these times where therapy should be at home, and maybe where you have more mental health issues. I think anxiety is growing. Then you have a device you have a device at home that helps you deal with this. And
the most recent studies I saw, especially in the COVID era that we have right now, is that a lot of scientists really have proven that anxiety, depression, all these psychological disorders are increasing. So especially during lockdowns, and having a device at home that when a person has an episode, can help, I think is of tremendous value, especially when I think back 3 to 4 years when we first met. I always pointed out that I think it's hard to finance such a project because the environment in 2017, 18, 16 was completely different from the funding side. Digital health was new. Digital therapeutics was also a new approach. Using medical devices to treat neurological diseases was a new approach. And I think in 2020, a lot changed in between. Do you see it the same?
Yes, absolutely. A funny thing is I get approaches now to companies who are in the state that we had in late 2017, so 3 years ago. And they are now, okay, they said, oh, we developed an EEG and it's great and it's that technology and it's cheap and everything. And when I asked them, okay, where do you are with medical regulations, and they have no clue. And I think if you would start this now, it's too late. I think there are enough companies at the moment working on this. We are not the only one, we are at the moment one of the very few, I think one of the twos I know at least, who are working on autism, and also more the generic approach. And I think what also difference is we're starting with the EU. So having the EU regulations, most of the other companies starting in the States with the FDA regulation, which is for neurofeedback much simpler actually, but you cannot make much claims. That's the thing. So that's why we said, okay, we are not going to Wales. We're starting with the hardest market, with the EU. We have to fulfill all the regulations, but then we can make all these claims and we can have our scientific evidence much clearer than we could do in the States or in any other country. And that's why we decided to do it exactly here.
No, I think it's a smart move because you create a nice moat around your company, so that protects your asset and probably helps you raise money. Let's talk a little bit about the future, and let's assume that you're living in a perfect world and money is not an issue. How would you develop your company in the next 5 years?
Well, if money is not an issue, it's definitely we already have some things in the States. I think the US market is going to be very interesting, and I'm willing now also with the new president to go there. Hopefully, and
let's keep politics out. It would it would be 4 hours discussion, I think.
No, I think if money would not be an issue, I think there's so much to learn still with the brain, and I had lots of talks with neuroscientists or also people who are dealing with EEGs, and they were sometimes surprised what you can use your EEG for. So, for example, the diagnostics is still very early stage, or building larger EEG databases is still early stage. So, I think building very clean and good quality databases of people who are have a proper diagnosis, and see what the EEG signals would look like, and compare it to unhelped, basically people who have some issues. I think that's still there's still lots to do, and the databases are usually not that large because we have to use these more expensive EEGs, and the infrastructure is not really great. The software of most of the medical EEGs is not great. So because it was developed 20 years ago, and that's basically where there are technology-wise in most cases. There are some examples, for example, GTech in Austria, they are making really great products, but they're expensive, of course. Yeah, so you get, I think one of the cheapest EEGs, I think from €1,000 onwards, you can get a 4-channel EEG. But I don't think even it's a medical device. It's just again for research, and that's something I really don't understand. But okay, their core business is just to develop EEGs. So I would do much more research in this field, because I think there is a lot of potential. There's lots of potential to understand how the brain works. It's still a very undiscovered area. When you think of, also Elon Musk is working on this Neuralink, which has a different idea behind it, but I think it's a good thing to think about, really starting this to make this more integrated, because it could be a very interesting interface if you have handicaps, if you have lost a leg or whatever, that you can steer it using your brain. Why not? So it's a huge research field, and it's very interesting. And I think if I'm coming from the computer science field, for me the brain is just a very complex computer, and I think there's still a lot of to learn on how it works and how people react in certain situations and why they would react. And the funny thing is, if we do our full head EEGs and look into the data and compare it to EEG databases, then you can see why they react this way, because the brain signature shows you that there is something wrong. And I think that's very interesting. Yeah.
But the thing is, a friend of mine has a medical device company in Graz, and he's measuring blood pressure. And in one of the conversations I had with him, the interesting thing was, he pointed out is that the problem with current medical devices is that all the testings happen under clinical settings. So the signals he gets are different in the clinics than compared to what a doctor would get if a person could measure the blood pressure 24/7, which is not possible right now.
That's true. Yeah.
I think it's also the same with EEG, probably, that when someone goes into a clinics, it's a very unique and special setting. And thinking about what you said earlier, that there's so much to learn about brain, I think this applies to the entire medicine. When it comes to diagnostics, I think we know nothing at all how diseases develop. And looking at the potential of modern technology, of especially digital health products, modern diagnostics like the Apple Watch or your device. In a speech I had with another investor, I think it was in 2018 2018, we were talking about how clinical studies changed. And he mentioned that not long ago, 5-6 years ago, scientists were happy to get a few hundred data points. And he brought forth the example of Fitbit, sleep study. So where he said they got 60 million data points to analyze, to learn more about sleep. And when I think about your device, if you could continue working with your company, make maybe the device a little bit smaller, better working, but it's fine-tuning. And I just can imagine that I could wear a cap a month and get an accurate readout of the way my brain works, and if there are any disorders in it. I think this would change probably tremendously.
We are far away from that, because even every movement you do, you would have created new electric signals. So it's not that easy. We have a gyroscope also in our EEG to measure, okay, how much movements do you have, and during the game, we're giving you also the feedback in that you should more or less stay still. We're trying to measure also if you are having any kind of facial muscles activated. So even if you talk, you will see it in the EEG. So I think the algorithms this is very difficult to filter, and I think it's probably even impossible. But yes, if you think of, we are working on one project with fine-tuning medication for epileptic patients. For that, this is something very interesting, because then maybe you can do and conduct a 10-minute EEG in the morning and a 10-minute EEG in the evening at home, full size, full cap. You have all the sensors that give you feedback that you're doing it right, and then the neurologist in the clinic can see if the medication that he prescribed is helping you with with the epileptic seizures. Do you see any spikes in the EEG or not? Our thing that we are thinking of if building it into our product. So once you do brain training to see if you have any epileptic spikes that would indicate that an epileptic seizure is imminent. So these are something that you can think of, but that's something we already are involved to some extent, and that's part of our future. Yes,
that's good. Good to hear. When I think about entrepreneurship, and you mentioned Elon Musk, which is probably also a great entrepreneur like you are. I mean, he started PayPal, I think, some time ago. Then he started Tesla, SpaceX, and with the fifth company started, it becomes quite easy, and especially when you have built a name. But I think the key to success is in the beginning. So when someone starts the first company, when someone starts the first project, and I know that there are many scientists. I had a talk a couple of weeks ago with a scientist from Oxford who also thinks about joining the early stage life science industry. There's always the question, how should I do it? So what should I be aware of? And my question to you is, what are the 3 key learnings that you would give such a young scientist to take care of before starting a company?
Elon Musk said, and I think I like it, don't do it. It's now the thing is with a scientist, I think my advantage is I come from the business. I understand very well business. I have an MBA. I did work for larger companies in business for IBM and also internationally. I think that helped me a lot. Also when doing all the calculation, financials, business cases, and all this kind of thing, I studied that. I did that at IBM in a similar way. And that's something scientists don't have usually. And these are the key things that you have to know. So if you're a scientist, you have a big disadvantage. You know that maybe the science that you are trying to build is great and is working. But you have no idea about the business. And I think you need to get someone on board with the business perspectives, because otherwise it would not work. So that's one key thing I think you need to do as a scientist. The other thing is which is I think it's very difficult to make a recommendation in general, but I think EU, and especially if you're in the Western world, regulations are, and especially if you go for medical devices, is huge. It's really, really big. And I had to say, now being in the process of defining all the processes for these ISO norms, and we have so many ISO norms to conclude. So we have the quality management system and everything. If I would have known this in the beginning, I'm not sure if I would have taken that route, to be honest. It's really a lot of work. It's really complex and difficult. However, on the other hand, as we are on that route now, and it looks very good. We had a stage 1 audit, and we are working from the stage 2 audit, and we're going to have the MDR audit in April if everything looks good now. And I think once we've got it, it's a huge hurdle for other companies to get into that market, because even for larger companies, it's not that easy. And I think, but what I would make different is to have a much better understanding on the regulations before starting it. But we had also a bit of a disadvantage because there was this change on the MDR. So there were even some uncertainties, and even the consultants were not really sure what this actually means. and or maybe we had just the wrong consultants. I don't know. But that was also maybe a disadvantage. But now we know, and now we are in that making progress. But giving back to the scientists, I think that's another thing. I would have someone just dealing with that. Just okay, what are the legal regulations of your business? So having one business person and having one dealing with all the legal framework and regulations and processes that needs to be taken into account. And best is before founding a company, because then you have a better understanding on what needs to be done.
That's good point. So basically, it's be aware that you don't have all the skills necessary and bring the right people in early on, and don't do it on your own. So to summary,
but the thing is, actually, I did it more or less on my own. Because my lessons learned from a previous startup was, if you have the wrong partners, you can have a great idea, but it never goes great. So and I think we had it was a parking sensor. It was I think it was a great idea, but with the wrong team, you are not getting anywhere. That's the downside of it. So
I agree. Sometimes it makes sense to walk slow to become faster. And what I see very often is that people are quick in founding a company, so a legal shell. Where I say, why do you need a company? I mean, you can still work on the prototype without spending time and money on legal work, and figure out if the prototype works, how the regulations look like. And as long as you don't need an investor or a tremendous amount of public funds in a company shell, use your time to move your project forward.
And be in stealth mode. So I think we went stealth quite long. I think we are still not very much in public.
Yeah.
So it's the first time I'm doing a podcast, so really. So
thank you.
And I think that's also, I think it's important, because you get distracted. You talk with so many people, and why? You should focus on your purpose.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. You mentioned Elon Musk, and let's assume for the last question, because I know that we agreed on 5 o'clock, and I know that running a business needs time, so I do my best to be on time. Let's assume Elon Musk develops a DeLorean Tesla. DeLorean was the car of Back to the Future, and he allows us to travel 10 years into the future and meet your future self. And we have the chance to ask your future self from 2030, what was the most important activity in 2020 that made Brain Hero and you as a CEO successful? What would he say?
I assume, but that's my current idea, is it would be definitely this medical, going through this medical route. And we copied it more or less from MySugar, because MySugar also started with going to the medical route. Funny enough, we actually have the same notifying body and the same auditor. I think that's key. I think you have to be serious. Don't go and have any consumer. Go for serious science. Go for especially if you're in a field where there's some scientists say this is bollocks what you're doing. Go and have your science right and make it clear. Make a good clinical study. Go and prove that this is working, and that's what we're doing.
Christof, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you get your funding round closed. So if anybody in our audience is interested in investing in a social impact company who can change the world and create a better world for our kids, feel free to reach out to Christof, and I'm looking forward to see you next time in real life.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please share the podcast and make sure you've subscribed. Have a great day.